Okay, welcome back. This is part 4 of our series for chapter 12. In this, I'm going to go back into our lab where we have our virtual environment set up, and we're going to go through Windows a little bit. So I've created a lab access link here when you log into the course from Blackboard. So if you click that and we log in, brings us into our lab environment. I've already created a reservation, so I already have that, but if you need one, right, you just go to new lab reservation, schedule lab for myself, and it's the ITSC for Spicer, right. I'll just go through it here real quick. The general class, and then ITSC 1305 for Spicer. And then you schedule a lab, and then it shows up in your reservations. And then we have our workstation. We'll go ahead and turn it on. I already have the machine running a little, right? So, and I've got my VM started. Remember, we've got a virtual machine within our machine. So this is the lab machine from NetLabs. But then in VMware, right? Oops, I didn't want to do that. VMware, I've got our VM running, and then so our VM is running, our password is password. All right, okay, so we put our desktop icons on here, right? So it makes it a little easier, quick access. We've removed some things from our taskbar. We have no internet or networking in NetLabs, and that's okay. We do have a message or notification, so let's just check out what that notification says. And scan drives for error. It's a security, say maintenance issue, and we won't do that right now. All right, so we can go into our folder here. Bring up the Windows Explorer. It's got all kinds of quick links or libraries, right? Desktop, download folder, documents, pictures, music, videos. If you have OneDrive, you can access this. This is a really, really nice feature to where you can share files across machines, and also back up your files very easily. So if you have access to OneDrive, that's a very useful tool. Then this PC, right? If we click on it, this PC only has one drive. It's just got the C drive, right? It's got a DVD, which has our VMware tools in there right now, CD. But one of the things that we can do is right click on this PC and we can manage it. We can pin this to the start. We can map a network drive if we had networking. This is very useful in an organization with servers and things like that, resources. You can easily access and create a persistent mapping to access certain files. And then scroll down here, and then we can go to the properties. So we'll go to the properties tab. So one of the things is this PC is one of the icons that I put out here on the desktop, and so if we right click on there, we can get easy access. This is one of the reasons I put this on the desktop, because it's very easy to get to some of the most useful items, especially the Manage tab, which we'll go over here in a little bit. But we went to the Properties tab, right? So in the Properties, we get basic information of what additional Windows did we install. This is the Windows 10 Pro. What's our processor, right? So our gigahertz, if it had multiple cores, it would show you that. How much RAM is installed. We installed 2 gigs of RAM. It's a 64 gig bit system. Here's our computer name, right? And the full computer name. And so I'm going to change that. And so then we'll just go up here and rename this computer, right? So this is where we would do to join an Active Directory domain. Right now, we're in a work group, right? And we'll learn about what that means. And in our Active Directory labs, we'll go over joining a domain and doing things like that. But right now, we'll just change our name here because we want our name to match the name of our VM in VMware. So we're going to name this VM1. It's going to stay in the work group. And we're going to say OK. And it says that we have to restart for these changes to be applied, and we say OK. And that's OK. But we also have some hardware stuff. We can get to the device manager from here. So let's open up device manager, right? So we just installed this version of Windows, but sometimes we may need drivers, especially like printers, right? So so for printers and stuff like that, maybe we need to add drivers so that we can print, add the printers. We might need network cards, right? If we have a different network card in here, or adding a network card, or maybe we're having trouble with this network card, we can update the driver. We can uninstall this device and then try and reinstall it. We can scan for hardware changes to see, if we've added a new card. We can go to the Properties tab of these hardware devices. We can see what the driver is installed, get driver details. Right, here's where the file exists in the Windows System 32 drivers folder. Right, so that's where your drivers will reside for most hardware devices, and most everything lives in our System 32 folder. I mean, that is like the folder for Windows, right? See Windows System 32, get to know it, go looking through that directory and see what's in there. But we'll come back around that a lot in this class. But we can update our driver. We can get some details. Right, so we can learn all there is about this device, like our driver version. We can get the driver version, so if we need to know if there's an updated version, we can go check that out. Let's see here. BIOS name, right? So this is how the BIOS sees it. All kinds of information here. First install date, right? So this was installed April 29th, 2020 is what it says. Power management. So can the computer turn this device off to save power? I don't like this for a network card because if your computer goes to sleep or whatever, but you're still transmitting and downloading stuff, right? So I don't like that. So I turn that off. because I really don't like that on my network cards, but that's just me. Resources, this tells you, some of the memory and IRQs that this device are using. We'll talk about that a little bit, but you'll learn more about that in hardware, about memory and IRQs for hardware devices. And events, so these are the events. If there's anything regarding this device, any errors or anything, that they would show up here, as well as in our event viewer. And then we got some advanced controls on our networking card. So one of the more important ones here for network cards is our speed and duplexing. Most of the time auto negotiation works, but many times it's ideal to set it. So like, if I were on a gigabit network, I'd want to guarantee I'm getting full gigabit. Duplex means that it can go in both directions at the same time. Full duplex. Half duplex is I can go one way at a time. So this 100 megs half duplex is twice as slow as this 100 megs full duplex, and because it can only send or receive when it's half duplex, it's got to wait. Whereas this full duplex, it can send and receive at the same time. But the auto negotiate is fine for most devices anymore. But on my networks at home and networks that I managed, I always manually set it so I guarantee it. And then if there was issues, then I was aware of the issues instead of it downgrading to 100 or 10 megs. I always wanted the full effect, right? And so we just changed that, and then but yes, so this is our device manager. If we had different video card, we can install that, update the drivers. Once again, you right click, update drivers if you had new drivers for it, or if you installed something new and it wasn't showing here, you can scan for hardware. But also if you are having issues or problems with a device, a lot of times you'll come in here and there'll be a red X or a yellow exclamation point saying that there's an issue, or a question mark. There'll be icons on here saying that there's an issue with your device. But that's our device manager. And so again, I got there through I'm going to restart later, through the change settings. But I could also get there from the device manager link right over here. So I'm going to go back into our change settings, right? So we did the hardware. We can do some device installations, advanced. So we can do some performance setting, user profiles, startup recoveries, environment variables. And so under performance, we'll get into this probably much later. But one of the things that you can work with is virtual memory. So we got 2 gigs of memory, which isn't a lot. So we would be using this virtual memory, which actually resides on the hard disk, and it would swap out items from memory to this hard disk virtual memory. And so this becomes important for performance in low memory machines like this one. And then we could set our performance for programs or background services, right? If for a typical user, it's going to be programs because we're interacting with the programs and running programs. Whereas maybe this is an automation machine that does something that you don't really have a user on it. then you can set it for background services. So you might get better performance out of that. And then this data execution prevention helps prevent against damages from viruses, right? So you turn it on for essential Windows programs and services, or you can turn it on for all programs and services except those I select. And this gets really challenging, but probably go into that a little bit later in our security sections. But I just want to just go over briefly. We have these environment variables. These are important when we get into our scripting and things like that, automation, because variables are just a name that store a value. So like this OneDrive stores the value of the location C:user student OneDrive. And so if I go here and I open up a command prompt, there we go, finally. And our machine is a little slow, but all right. So I've opened up a command prompt. This is where you can type commands, right? So we're in the C:user student folder, and I'm going to change directories to OneDrive. And so then it actually changed to C:user students OneDrive, because that is the value that is stored. If I can get this here. Right, C:user students OneDrive is the value stored by OneDrive. And I just, oops, oh, I got two windows, that's why. C:user students OneDrive, I just typed the CD OneDrive, but it knew that that variable OneDrive stood for this location. I can also do an echo % OneDrive % to get the value, right? And so it tells me that C:user student OneDrive is the value of that. Let's do another one. So like the temp location. So I can do an echo % temp %. I put the percents around it, it's telling it I want the value of what's stored in temp, not the word temp. And so it tells me that the value is C::user students app data local temp, right? So these are powerful variables, and you can create your own, right? So you can create variables that help you, or you can use some of the defined variables, right? So Windows directory is a defined variable, and that's C Windows, right? Let's see what else we've got here. Number of processes, right? So we really don't have that. So what I want is I want a new variable, and I want to do we'll just call it sys32, and the value is going to be Windows System 32, right? So what I'm telling this is when I type or use the variable sys32, I want it to go to the System32 folder in Windows, and I could just browse the directory, right? So I could just do this, go to C, Windows, and System 32, right? Okay, same thing. And then I say OK. So now I've got this sys32, but I don't think it's available until after I close it out and do that. But we'll just say OK. And so I've got my environment variables, and all right. And then we'll just go system protection is off, right? And that's okay. We'll get into that much later. And then allow remote assistance on this computer, so you can actually ask for help and somebody can remote desktop in here and help us. Or we can even open up remote desktop, and we'll go into that once again a lot more. But we'll just close this and say OK. Let's just test this out. I do believe I've got a oops, %sys32. Yeah, so it's not there yet. Let's see if I can do cmd. So one thing I'm going to do once this does show up is I'm going to pin that to my desktop or to my taskbar. Alright, well, it's taking a lot of time, so I'm just going to hit enter and see if it'll just launch. What? Alright, so that's not working for me. Let's CMD. Okay, so now we got the command prompt showing up. We're going to pin this to the taskbar, and I'm going to run it. Now I'm going to echo %sys32%, and now see, I had to close the command prompt and then come back in, and now it's available. And so then I can change directory to sys32 %sys32, and it works just great. Now I've got a shortcut to my System32 folder that I can use in scripts to automate things, and we'll do that a little later in the class too. But all right, so definitely the properties window, right? We've got all kinds of information. We can change our settings. This is where we join the domain. If we right, so right now we're not activated, right? So we can activate our windows, right? Because before, when we installed this, we didn't install a product key. I told you we would do that later. So this is later. And since we don't have internet, we can't activate Windows that way. But we need to activate our Windows and put in our product key. Alright, we're going to change our product key. And I have my product key here. I'll give this to you as well. We'll be with this video. But we'll just get this product key. We'll paste this in here. My VMware Tools is not working. Oh, okay. Well, that's probably because we probably can't do that in this lab. So let me see here if I can set this up, because I forgot we're in the NetLabs environment, we won't be able to drag and drop from our machines, because normally you could, if you're remote desktoped in and you're remotely accessing a machine, you can transfer files from one to another, but we're in a browser here, and so we can't do that. So now I'm going to have to type this out. K V R M Y dash N Q J R C 3 V 4 D F 9 F J 8 B W H W V 3. Go next. And we get our best performance, and so we're going to activate. And on normal machines, this goes much faster, so I do apologize. Our labs are much slower than they should be. We have some pretty limited resources here, but um, and also without having internet access, that does cause issues, right? So yeah. So we can't activate because they can't connect to their servers. They aren't available right now. Make sure you connect to the internet, and we'll automatically try to activate when the service becomes available, right? So normally this would activate. It would take a matter of a few seconds, but we don't have internet access, so it can't activate. It needs to connect to Microsoft and validate that key. But if we ever got internet access, it would activate and we'd be good to go. But that's how you would activate a machine. Maybe we'll do this in Azure. It's looking like we may need to use our Azure access in Microsoft's cloud for some of our labs. But anyway, that is definitely how you would activate, and as long as you have internet access, it would go. Let's see here. What else from this here? I think we'll cover some of the other stuff much later. All right. So close that. So like I said, we have our icons out here, which is quick access. We did the properties. Now I'm going to do the manage. So because we have Pro on here, we have access to more features. In Home Edition, you don't have those features. You'd have to go through the control panel and do some things. But because we have Pro on here, we have access to all kinds of management tools, one of which is our local users and computers. So we look at our users, right? We have our student account, which is the account we're logged in under. but there's an admin and a guest account and a default account, and this WDAG utility account. So these are all created, but right now, administrator and student, we're an administrator account on here. So is the administrator account. It's a built-in account that gets created. But we're going to create a new user. So we can just right-click in here and create a new user, and we're going to just call it standard. All right, and then full name is standard user. Oops. And then password is password. Right now it's set to the user has to change their password the next time they log in. I'm going to uncheck that. I'm going to put the user cannot change password, even though you almost never do that. But we're just going to set it so it's password. Password never expires. We could disable the account, but we're not because we're creating it. And we'll just create the user. And we'll close it. And so now we've got this standard user, right? So that's just a regular user account. So you have user accounts, standard user accounts, and the admin account, right? You definitely need to learn that there's two types of accounts: the administrator accounts and then the standard user accounts. Standard user, we'll go through some labs with that and show you if you try to do admin features, you're not able to, or you get prompted for a password from an admin, and so we'll do that. But suffice to say, this is where you just right-click on this PC, go to Manage, and I can go to Local Users and Computers, and this is where I can manage my user accounts on this machine. They're local accounts, so they exist only on this computer. We'll go into a lot of detail between Active Directory accounts and local accounts. And then other things that we can do in here is our disk management. This is another major feature here that we can do management of. So right now it's showing that I have disk 0. We're 0 based a lot in IT. So disk 0 is our first disk, right? And we have the C drive over here. That's where Windows is installed. And then we have two other little partitions that were created by Windows, and our partition processing and set them up while we were installing Windows, and they're usually not accessible. They're kind of hidden. You don't really access them, but they're used by the system. And you can see one's 99 megs and the other's 529 megs. So together they're not even a gig of our space. So they're very tiny. And then we have our DVD or CD-ROM drive, and it's got the disk in there. But we could, we'll have, well, let's do this. So we kind of talk about installation. Let's see here if I can, because I can normally do this in normal VMwares, but I've not done this in the NetLab version. But so let's just go. I'll right click on my VM tab and go to Settings. And then I'm going to go to add, and we're going to add a hard drive. It's already selected, hard drive, and we'll just do a SCSI drive, and we'll create a new virtual disk. 60 gigs is fine, and the name is fine, and we'll say OK. And boom, now we've got disk 1, right? So I just added a disk to our machine. This is one beautiful thing about virtual machines, is you don't have to turn the machine off to add the disk. So we added a disk, a 60 gig disk onto our machine, and we can now manage this. So if we click on it and right click, we have to initialize it, right? We'll go in this in a lot more detail, but then we can choose, are we doing a master boot record partition with this, or a GUID partition table with this drive. And it's only 60 gigs, so we could do either, right? If this were over 2 terabytes, we'd have to do the GUID, right? Remember, the 2.2 terabytes is the limit on a master boot record, and there's a limit of 4 drives with a master boot record, 4 partitions, whereas GUID can have 128. Most of the time, you're always going to choose this GUID partition table, and there's almost no reason not to. And then now it's available, it's online, but it's unallocated. And so we can do several things. We can do a new simple volume because there's only one drive. We really can't do anything. And then we could choose to just do half the drive. Let's just do. We can assign the drive letter, right? So we can choose whatever drive letter we want for this partition. E is fine, right? So we'll just go ahead and go next. Or so we could create a drive letter, or what we can do is this mounting point, which we could actually place this drive on this other drive. So it would look like it's on this drive, and you just create a folder on the C drive, and then that folder would actually use all this space. But we'll get into that later too. But we'll just assign it a letter. Now, right, NTFS is the main file system type for Windows. We need to have NTFS when we install Windows. The drive that Windows is on must be NTFS, but we could choose FAT32. It doesn't recognize large drives either, so you have some issues with FAT32, but you also have less security. There's no real security with FAT32, where NTFS has security. So that's typically the file system of choice. We're just going to call this a new drive, but you can do whatever you want. Maybe it could be data drive, and then we can form a quick format or a full format. We'll do a quick one, and then you can enable compression. This used to be a big deal years and years ago, but it's not so much with the size of drives. We don't really have to worry about compression. It's a tool to help try to save space, but there's a overhead, and it can slow things down to do it, because it's got to uncompress, compress when you use things. but it's available. It's an option, but it used to have more meaning when when we were less than a gig drive spaces. Space was a premium. All right, we'll finish this, and so now it's going to format, and it created our E drive, right? But I only did half the drive, so half of it is the E drive, and this other half is free space that I can do and create another drive or do other things with. All right, let's see here. All right, so that's managing our computer. So one thing is we can share our drive with others, right? So this is where our shares exist, right? So there's actually when Windows installs, there's these admin shares or hidden shares that exist on our computer, and they have the $sign. You can create a hidden share, and what that means is anytime you go to a machine over the network, you can see the shares that exist. So like the $sign. So once we restart this machine, if we went to slash backslash VM1 backslash $sign, it would actually come up because we have access to it. So this is what I'm talking about here, but we're oh goodness. Right, so we can't do this because our machine hasn't been renamed yet, but we'll do that here in a second. But so the backslash VM1 backslash $sign, it would actually bring up our C drive. And if you did the backslash VM1 backslash, it would show any shares. Right now we have no shares. But so we're going to create one. So once I restart this, I'll show you this. So we're going to do a new share, and we're just going to go to our E drive that we just created, right? E drive, and say OK. It's not recommended. Yes, we want to continue because we're just doing a lab. And we're just going to call this the data. Wow. Data. And this is my data drive. And we'll say next. And we're going to say administrators have full access and others have read-only access. And say finish. Okay, and I don't want to do another one, so we're going to finish. So now we got our data drive. It doesn't have the $sign, so it'll show up. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's go ahead and restart this machine. Restart. All right, so why we're restarting is because we renamed this computer, and so now it's making all the updates. It's changing the name, and there's what are called registry settings that it needs to change. The registry is the database of it's basically where Windows resides, all the information about Windows and programs and things like that, and they reside in the registry. We'll show you that here in just a minute. we doing on time here? Okay, we got a little time left. All right. Alright, so let's see here, and it's finishing up, renaming the computer. And while it's doing updates like this, you definitely don't want to turn your computer off because it could corrupt things so beyond repair that you just have to restart and reinstall Windows and lose everything. So you definitely don't want to lose power in this scenario. Alright, so now we've got it back up. We'll do our password, but now you see that we have a standard user that we can go to, or we can log in as student. We're going to log in as student because we do need admin access for the rest of this lab, but other labs will log in as standard. Alright, so now our machine has been renamed. So if we go to this PC, alright, once again you can see the D drive, E drive and the C drive. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the / VM1 now that we're renamed. And we can see that we have the data drive, right? That's the share that we just created. So let me open up the E drive. Open up in a new window. And I'm going to create a new file here. Do a bitmap image and image. Alright, so now we got a file on there on the E drive, and so we can go to our data folder, our share, right, and there's the image file, right? So we're accessing it remotely. So I could give this link out to somebody, and if they have a user account, say the standard user, say that was Bob, and he could log in. You could email him this link, right? And if he was on the same network as I am, he could type this in and get to the image file. He would just be prompted for his username and password, which would be standard and password, and he could get to this over the network if we had another machine. And so they can do that. And we may even be able to do that if we can get two machines running in here and see how that works. But we'll definitely cross that when we get into the shares. But the other thing is I can, if you notice, right, there's only one share here. The others are hidden, right? There still is a C $ share, right? That goes straight to my hard drive. There's the admin share, which goes to system 32. right? Um, so these are hidden shares, right? With the dollar sign, they're hidden because they don't display when you go to the machine. They're hidden. I just wanted to show that. All right, so I mentioned the registry, right? So I'll just show you that a little bit. When we renamed our machine, basically it uh, edited our registry. And so we have a tool called the registry editor. And if you're an admin on the machine, you can launch this. Um, but okay, so I am an admin, but it's saying, are you sure you want to use this application, because it requires admin access. You need elevated access. This is a user account control. If you were the standard user, it would actually come up and prompt for a password, because the standard user is not an admin and you're trying to use an admin feature. So there's a difference. An admin account just gets a yes and no prompt when you try to do something admin, and a standard account gets prompted for a password because they need admin access, right? They need a username and password with rights. But yes, we want to run this, and this is the registry editor. And so these are called hives. This is where the information is stored, and the classes. These are just the various, like file types, things like that, and other uses, right? So here's the bitmap, right? So this is the image bitmap. This tells it that what it is, um, uh, and how to just basic information about it. These are how Windows associates and knows what is what. Um, but then you have your current user, like so. I'm logged in as student, so that's the current user. But if I went and logged in as standard, then the current user would be standard, and I would get all the information for that current user, right? Such as software, printers, right? Because different users might have different printers. The system might be different, right? Here's the current control set for my user account, and some information about my networking here, policies. All this is for the current user, right? Um, then you have the local machine. These apply to every user because this is the machine. And so here's the system folder for that, the current control setting for that, software, classes, local settings, right? Services. Here's all the services and how they're run. Everything about these are services that can run automatically. It's just software. Services are software that are predefined and run in the background. But so these are the services that run for every user, or could run for every user, because these are on the local machine. This is the keys that apply to all users, and this is the current config given the local machine and who's logged in, and everything that's for the current configuration. And so let me see here. Oh yeah, let's do software, Windows, Microsoft. Yeah. Let's see here. Clipboard. Oh, come on. Let me look at something. Shell speech. Sysprep. Sysprep will be important much later. All right, now let's do system current control set services. Let's see if we can get down here, find the spooler service. Spooler. Okay. All right. So, yeah, I don't think we want to do anything with that, but object name, spooler group, spooler exe. So the spooler services are printing, right? It's our print queues. Yeah, I don't see performance. Yeah, I don't think I want to change anything on there. All right, well, I'll look at that. We'll do something. I definitely, because whatever you do in here is very important because it does impact how Windows runs. But if you do ever want to make a change in the registry, say if I wanted to change something here, first I would right click and I would export it, right? And I'm going to do spooler, and then I'm just going to put that on the desktop. Alright, so now I've got it backed up. So if I make a change and it doesn't work, I can reapply this by just double clicking on this, and it would set it back the way it was. So that's definitely what you want to do before you make any edits in the registry. But it's very powerful. The registry also does live as a file in our system 32, right? So if we can just go to C:, Windows, and then system 32. And I believe it's the config. Ask for admin access, right? And so here are all of the system software security, right? The SAM database is where our passwords and users reside. We've got all kinds of access to. This is where the registry. These are the registry, the system software and security. These are the registry, the defaults and drivers. This is how the registry is built. And if we do a registry backup, yeah, and once again, you need to have an access. If you do a backup of the registry, this is where the registry backup is. So it's important to also have a backup of the registry. But that's our registry. I'm going to delete this. Empty our recycle bin. All right. So one of the last things I'm going to go over here in this video is our control panel. Right. So we can uninstall programs very easily. We deal with hardware and sound, deal with our network, systems and security. Right. You can do backups and restores. We can manage our user accounts, uh, adjust our appearance and personalizations, the clock regions, times, dates, any ease of access. If you're visually impaired, things like that, you can do with that. This is the category view. Um, you can also do the large or small icon view, uh, which makes it a little easier uh, to drill down. Um, but you can use either one of these, and so you have access to all kinds of admin features and management and optimizing the machine from our control panel. All right, that's enough for this video. I'll catch you in our next video. We'll go over um, quite a few more things left in our chapter here. Especially installing Windows features, things like that. But I'll catch you in the next video.